It's story time. I have always loved stories. I don't know about you, but growing up, I loved to read stories, listen to stories, make up stories. Stories are powerful. They can educate us, take us places we've never been, and they can also cause us to question some of the things that we believe. So today, I want to share some of my favorite genre of stories. And let's start with fairy tales. How many of you love fairy tales? So if so, you should remember one of the classics, The Three Little Pigs. And let's go down memory lane. So there were three little pigs, we remember that, and they all needed a place to stay, place to sleep, have a little fun, hang out. But they were all quite different. The first little pig, he loved to party and have fun. So he didn't want to spend too much time on work, or especially building a house. So what did he make his house out of? Straw. He gathered up a few little pieces, threw it together real quick, and there was his house. After a few minutes, there was a knock at the door. Knock, knock, knock. And who was it? The big bad wolf. Now, supposedly, the wolf huffed, he puffed, and he blew down the house. And so the little pig had to run on, scurry on to his other brother's house. Now, his other brother was a little bit like him. He liked to have fun, but he did understand a little bit more the importance of having somewhere to sleep. So he took a little bit more time building his house. And what was that made out of? Sticks. So he found a few branches, a few sticks on the ground, and he took a little bit more time and built his house. So now it was him and his little brother. And there again was a knock, knock, knock at the door. Again was said that the big bad wolf huffed and he puffed and he blew down that house. And so those two brothers ran to their older brother's house. Now he was quite different from the first two. While he did still like to have fun, he also recognized the vital importance of work. So he took a little bit more time building his house. And what did he build his house out of? Bricks. And I do know a little bit of something about brick houses. But let's move on. So then again, after a few minutes, all the brothers are in the house. There was a knock, knock, knock at the door. It was the big bad wolf. He huffed, he puffed, he huffed, he puffed, but he sure couldn't blow that house down. Is that the way you remember the story? Well, that's the way most people remember the story. But let's take it from a slightly different angle, from the perspective of the wolf. What if the wolf was just trying to find somebody's house to get some help, or just somebody to hang out with? Maybe he just wanted a cup of sugar. No, that wasn't the story or the depiction about the wolf. And if we look at fairy tales, The Three Little Pigs is not the only story where we hear about a big, bad wolf. There's Little Red Riding Hood, and that's where the analogy comes, a wolf in what? Sheep's clothing. So as you can see, the wolf clearly has been depicted and constructed as a threat. Somebody about doing damage, not being a good person. So we're going to leave fairy tales for a minute and let's go to another genre that I absolutely love, and that's history. So there's world history, ancient history, but I want to focus on American history. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. And now most of us, we're very familiar with that first sentence of the Declaration of Independence. But is that the totality of American history? What about the indigenous genocide, African slavery, Japanese internment, Chinese prohibition, Jim Crow, lynching, Sandra Bland, Trayvon Martin? Is that the history you grew up reading about? Is that the history you know very well? We'll come back to that history in a little bit, but let's move on to another genre that I also am very interested in: travel and geography. So when you think about books and how they can transplant you and take you to different places, we envision and we want to learn more about wonderful cities around the world. So I have a couple for you. I'm going to describe them, and then, like with many cities, I'm going to refer to their zip code. So one city has an airport, a college, 3 high schools, several middle schools, elementary schools, a lot of different tourist attractions. One city. Another city, zip code 90210. Can you tell me what that city is? Well, if you remember the 90s television show, Beverly Hills 90210. And when we think about Beverly Hills, what are some of the thoughts that come to mind? Beautiful, affluent, safe. Now, let's just change one number on that zip code, not 90210, but 90220. City of Compton. What a difference a number makes. Because when we think about the city of Compton, what are some of the words that we tend often to associate with the city? Violent, poverty, lack. Very different from the 90210. But that's not the Compton that I'm familiar with. So when we think about the importance of stories, we have to caution against what Chimamanda Adichie calls the danger of a single story, a limiting, singular, rigid, stereotypical perception or story that seeks to craft people or places or perspectives in a particular way. We have to question the intentionality of such marginalizing, dehumanizing, limiting perspectives and stories. In my research, particularly on lynching in America, I studied what is called victimage rhetoric, because I wanted to understand not just about such narratives, but how they operate. And the reason I wanted to understand how they operate was because I wanted to understand how to disrupt them. And so from my research, when you engage in victimage rhetoric, you create this threat, this other, somebody who is going to take away something that you like, love, or believe in. And so to justify either harming them, limiting them, or even killing them, you have to construct them as something so different from yourself that you justify their marginalization, you justify their oppression, and you justify keeping them in a very singular box. So again, let's go back and talk about American history. When we think about a complete American history, how do we forget about C.R. Patterson, Charles Drew, Garrett Morgan, who invented the stoplight, Well, what about Sojourner Truth? Because ain't I a woman? What about Ida B. Wells Barnett, Mary McLeod Bethune, Henrietta Lacks, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker? Were those oversight? Or were those intentional exclusions? So again, what is the intentionality of marginalizing and dehumanizing narratives to construct people and places and cities in a particular way? It's designed to maintain power, privilege, and to repeat oppression. Because there's nothing new about crafting a message that is dehumanizing and marginalizing, because we've seen it time and time again. One of my favorite quotes is, history does not repeat itself. Human beings repeat history. So how do we disrupt such narratives? How do we call into question such perspectives? Well, I think that we can use digital technology for one. Because if you don't know who you are and whose you are, anybody can craft a story about you. So you have to know your own cultural identity. You have to go out and seek your own stories. So right now, you can use cell phone, you can use Zoom, and you can capture the history, the story, whether it be your grandparents or community members or your neighbors, but capture the stories and tell them so that they can disrupt and replace and especially refute such narratives. Very important. So when we think about City of Compton, again, we have to tell our own story so it does not become a fairy tale. And like the big bad wolf, be the person who is always getting the bad rap. So whether it be fairy tales or history or travel or geography, stories are very important. And I always say, never worry, because in the words of a great Compton native, we gonna be all right.